That's the end of the section on Renaissance medicine. Up to 200 years ago, change in medical knowledge and practice had mostly been extremely slow.
In the 19th century, however, things began to change very fast. At the beginning of the century, understanding of disease was still very basic. In fact, some still believed in the four humours. But by the 1850s, the Industrial Revolution had brought enormous wealth to many European countries. Industrialization helped bring greater confidence in scientific and medical progress. Across Europe, advances were being made in the study of disease, including the revolutionary new idea that disease was associated with tiny organisms or microbes. A key figure in this discovery in the 1850s was the French scientist Louis Pasteur. While you watch the next clip, think hard about Pasteur's method of working. How would you describe it?
A local brewer was having problems. The fermentation, which was supposed to be going on inside the vats, wasn't working. So the alcohol wasn't forming properly. He had asked for Pasteur's help. Please. After a careful series of experiments, Pasteur found the explanation.
It's harmful microorganisms in the vats which are causing all the trouble. Leave the matter with me. I'm sure a solution can be found.
Thank you, monsieur.
But there were wider implications.
Everything indicates that contagious diseases owe their existence to similar causes.
And Pasteur's work would not only shed light on disease, but would contribute to the debate about what was known as the theory of spontaneous generation.
Suppose I boil liquid and leave it to cool. After a few days, moldiness, little animals will develop in the liquid. By boiling, I destroy any germs, but the liquid being again in contact with the air will change, become moldy. Now, suppose that before boiling the liquid, I draw the neck of the flask into a point, leaving its end open. Then I boil the liquid in the flask and leave it to cool. The liquid will remain pure, not only for 2 days, a month, a year, but 2 or 3 years. What difference is there then between these two flasks? In the first, the dusts suspended in the air and their germs can fall into the flask and arrive in contact with the fluid. In the second, the dust falls on its curved neck or into the first curve only. The one thing that cannot enter easily is the dust suspended in the air. The proof of this is that if I shake the flask violently 2 or 3 times, in a few days, it will contain little animals or moldiness. Why? Because air has come in violently enough to carry the dust with it. And never will the doctrine of spontaneous generation recover from the mortal blow of this simple experiment.
Pasteur set himself a problem, conducted experiments to find a solution, evolved a theory to explain what was happening, and finally conducted tests to prove or disprove the theory. This is known as the scientific method. Pasteur didn't apply his theory of microbes to human disease, but a German physician called Robert Koch did. During the 1860s, Koch identified the germs for 2 of the most lethal diseases of the time, TB and cholera.
Koch had set up a laboratory in his home, at his and his family's own expense. In this remote country area, there was an outbreak of anthrax, a disease which decimated sheep and cattle and occasionally infected humans. Koch, who had developed a special interest in microscopes, decided to investigate. His research built on the work of Pasteur and Lister on microorganisms. One feature of anthrax was that cattle could catch it not only from other infected cattle, but also from the soil where the infected animals had grazed. Koch showed that this was because the type of microorganisms or bacteria responsible for the disease could exist in the soil as particularly hardy forms known as spores.
When these spores are once formed in the soil, there is good reason to believe that anthrax can remain in this region for many years. Knowing this, we must now seek measures in order to save the animals and to protect thousands of people from an agonizing death.
Then Pasteur, building in turn on the work of Koch, discovered a method of immunizing cattle against anthrax. He used the technique of vaccination. Vaccination had been discovered by the Englishman Edward Jenner, who protected people against the deadly smallpox by infecting them with the closely related but harmless cowpox infection. But Jenner didn't know how it worked. Because of his work on microbes, Pasteur could show how it worked. His first successful mass inoculation against anthrax was carried out in 1881. Other researchers built on these discoveries. Emil Behring found that animals made antitoxins in their blood to fight harmful bacteria, and used animal blood containing these antitoxins to cure diphtheria in humans. And Paul Ehrlich developed a way of using chemical dyes to attack specific disease-causing bacteria without harming the rest of the body, a magic bullet that would only kill its target. These scientists were not only making discoveries, but providing cures too. This is one kind of question you'll be faced with in the exams. It's worth 12 marks. What factors were important in enabling these revolutionary medical discoveries to be made? Stop the tape now and have a go at answering the question. Rewind and watch this section again if you need to. In order to answer a question on these discoveries, you need to not just describe the discoveries themselves, but also the different factors that made them possible. Hopefully you will have spotted some or all of the points below. Obviously individuals were important. Pasteur, Koch, Behring and Ehrlich were brilliant original thinkers who built on each other's work. The scientific method of conducting experiments, recording and then publishing work meant that other people could check their results and take it a step further. The fact that scientists published their work and that communications were vastly improved was important in spreading new scientific ideas. Technological developments such as the microscope allowed scientists to investigate microorganisms. Industry and government were important. It was a brewing firm that commissioned Pasteur's original investigations, and much of this time-consuming research was funded by governments. All these factors continued into the 20th century.
That's the end.